We're a relatively small team. There are, I guess, 5 or 6 people on the IR team. Again, 4 of us on the row crop acquisition side, 3 on permanent crops, 2 on timber. So it's by answering people's questions. It's by being grilled over and over and over again and being just a sort of insanely transparent. Right? I mean, I will show you my model. I will tell you every single response I'm going to get, and if it's a win for both of us, it works.
Ladies and gentlemen, farmers, ranchers, and distinguished guests, thank you for listening to the Farm4Profit podcast, where we discuss the latest ideas, methods, trends, and techniques available to help your farm achieve higher levels of farm profitability. The Farm4Profit podcast is co-hosted by Tanner Winterhoff, the Iowa Bankerman, and David Whitaker, the Iowa Land Guy, where in tandem they will share their ideas and advice from industry experts. Thank you again for listening to the Farm4Profit podcast. Remember, if you aren't farming for profit, you won't be farming for long. And now, here's Tanner and David.
And welcome back to the Farm4Profit podcast. This is Tanner Winterhoff.
This is Corey Hillebo.
And this is David Whitaker.
Yeah, we are 3 guys talking on the mics, trying to help you achieve higher levels of profitability. If you're new to this show, we have 2 different formats. Corey and our listeners nicknamed us the Mullet of Agriculture Podcast because we're going to talk a little bit about a topic today specifically. And the next one in your queue will be our Farm for Fun shows, where we kick back like we're sitting at the bar hanging out with old friends.
Remember to hit subscribe on any platform that you're on. We'd love your listener reviews and share your ideas. Farm4Profit LLC at gmail.com.
Probably the most recently and most important to go check us out is on our YouTube channel. We haven't been good at, but now we're building, and so go check them out.
And on TikTok. So Farm4Profit on TikTok, we're going to put out more clips of our show so you guys can actually see our pretty faces instead of just listening to our, I'm not even going to put a descriptive word. We'll just say voice.
Yep.
And voice is here.
Yep.
Corey, tell me about our listener review today.
Yeah, our listener review is brought to you by AcreTrader. So we hung out with them a little bit at the show, actually right before the show.
Yeah.
And you can check out all their cool stuff, their right spot technology with their sprayers, their cart ace. That's a big thing. You don't even need that much. You already have the stuff. If you have AcreTrader, you already have the stuff you need.
Yeah.
To manage your grain cart.
The people there are awesome to work with, and they even shoot us text messages to our text line just to see if they can get riled in there and get a response out of us. If you want to send us a text, 515-207-9640. But we also want to say happy anniversary since they are 30 years old as a company.
It doesn't seem like it's been that long.
No, because you're not even 30 yet yourself, Corey.
No. It's kind of crazy for a big company like that to be just 30 years old. You would have thought they would have been around as long as John Deere.
That's right. Well, our review today is from TikTok, milking_cows_we, which I assume is Wisconsin. Says, great podcast once again, guys. And he was referring to, or at least commented on, a clip from the native microbials.
Yeah. And that was a sneaky episode.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
If you haven't caught that one, go back, look up native microbials.
And if you haven't been listening for the last couple of episodes, we're starting a new segment, and that is the new Legacy Farmer segment. It was one of the podcasts we did. We liked it so much that we've kind of partnered with Legacy Farmer, and we're going to share a clip each week, and it's coming to you right now.
It's Young here from Legacy Farmer, bringing you another legacy principle for today, titled, "The longer you avoid the problem, the more painful it becomes." Human beings inherently avoid pain. We avoid discomfort. We avoid facing the truth and owning up to the problems in our lives. For farmers, we avoid financial problems, management problems, and most importantly, family problems. On family farms today, most of the time there's zero difference between family problems and business problems because the business consists of the family. Now, it's a guarantee that thousands of farmers today have been avoiding problems for years. And one question I want you to ask yourself is this: what will the long-term cost be from your unwillingness to confront those problems? What will the cost be to your family if you don't get on top of your finances? What will the cost be in your operation if you don't get correct management systems in place? Let me tell you what the cost will be. Years of sleepless nights, endless family turmoil, and a disorganized, chaotic, and unprofitable business of which your children will never want to come back to. How do I know this? I grew up watching all of this unfold in our family's third generation operation until it went bankrupt in 2005. So take this message and don't let what happened to my family become your reality. Stop hiding from your problems and do what is required to fix them today. Your children are counting on you.
Gosh, another really powerful statement from Jace at Legacy Farmer. Don't avoid your problems, Corey.
That hit home.
Yeah.
Every message he sent hit home so far. It's like the opening that gives anticipation to what the episode should be. I mean, it's like, man, I want to watch the next one. Quick, next episode, Netflix, go.
Just want to remind our listeners that no decision is still a decision, but it might not be the right choice.
Sometimes it is.
Could be.
Sometimes it's not. Most of the time, probably not.
Most of the time, probably not. Mm-hmm. Well, if you want to interact with Jace more, go to legacyfarmer.org. Let them know that Farm4Profit sent you. But again, thank you, Jace, for this segment here. Let's jump into our general topic for today.
Ready to stop making and losing the same $100 on a calf? Balance Forward is a cattle feeding management company that wants to create opportunities for mid-market cattlemen tied to the land in the central part of the United States. We share the same vision and values. The success of Balance Forward stems from their ability to take what they have learned firsthand and apply it transparently to your business. Balance Forward takes a unique approach on managing the overall inventory for your client on cattle, corn, and feed.
Their consultative services, known as the Cattle Business Systems, is designed to help cattlemen with all aspects of their business, from corn procurement, buying feeder cattle, to internal position management. Cattle Business Systems will work with you to develop a customized plan to help your business grow and will continue to be a resource for you month after month. If you're ready for your cattle business to reach its highest potential, give Balance Forward a call at 712-785-3766 or visit www.balanceforward.com. That is BALANCE, the number 4, WARD.com. So, Dave, remember we did an episode focused on various ways to gain access to real estate, and that was a listener question that, we talked about straight cash rent, we talked about variable flex rate leases, we talked about setting up long-term arrangements that are both beneficial to landlords and tenants, and then Corey posed the question, he goes, I don't think we addressed what that listener wanted. The simple portion was, how do I get access to more land? Because land is so valuable in the terms of operating a farm operation.
It sure is, and it's harder to find because everybody wants it, and they're not making any more.
Not making any more of it, exactly. And when's the time to buy, Dave?
Whenever you're ready. Whenever you're ready to buy is the time to buy.
You always say when it's for sale.
When it is for sale.
That's
yes.
right. So we're going to go down a different route of possibly helping our listeners gain access to more farmland or assets in general. And proud to have a new connection. I met Rob in person. It was one of those by happenstance. Ended up being a really good conversation. Led into a possible really constructive conversation for you as a listener. Rob Moore is investment manager on the row crop side of things for AcreTrader. So a digital platform, Dave. I know you're familiar with AcreTrader, at least.
You bet.
Yeah. So he works on the investment manager side for the row crop side. AcreTrader specializes in row crop farm sourcing and acquisition. That's exactly what our listeners are looking for. Prior to joining AcreTrader, he worked in forensic accounting. Oh, that sounds boring.
It was.
We had somebody else that did that.
Does research, did some development, did some program management throughout the waste and recycling industry. That's a little bit more exciting. But anyway, he is here today to help our listeners gain access to more farmland. Welcome, Rob.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
So did I do a good job, or who is Rob?
Oh, yeah. Simply, me.
Yeah, you, Rob.
Yeah, so I came out of the waste and recycling industry. Before that, I worked on a farm. So straight out of college, I didn't know what the hell to do with myself. So I got in a car and I moved to Arkansas.
Arkansas.
I got a job working on a livestock operation. I loved it. I fell in love with agriculture and farming. I had no historical background in it. I didn't inherit ground. I didn't have any access into that industry. So went and got another career. I had a career in trash and recycling. I worked on the finance side of trash and recycling. After working, picking up recycling, sorting trash, I've sort of done it from the ground up. From there, I had the opportunity to get back into agriculture with AcreTrader and jumped all over it. I live in a rural community. I live on several acres and have my own homestead, but I was really interested in what was happening in production agriculture. I think we have seen with the average age of the farmer today is 59 or 60, yet I'm surrounded by and speak every day to farmers that are a whole lot younger than that and are trying to get into that industry with a different set of resources and also lacking in some of those resources. So it was really awesome that I found an opportunity to work with a company that as truly pro-farmer. My job is exclusively to find an opportunity to marry farmers looking for equity investment in their business and investors that are looking to invest in agriculture.
So let's back up just a second for our listeners. So what, if we just put our 30,000-foot view, what is AcreTrader? Digital platform that connects operators to investors.
That's correct.
Oh, got it. And so and it sources the land as well.
That's correct. So, generally, our leads are coming directly from operators.
Okay.
Right? I'm not a bank of land that an operator comes to and says, hey, what will you lease to me? I'm not an asset-focused business.
You don't have a secret land list that everybody wants to get access to?
No, sir. No.
Gotcha. So is it, I'm going to throw that big word out there, crowdsource funding? Are we like taking my $10, his $10, his $10, throw them all together and we're going to buy farm ground? Or do we have to have the farm I sold last week, $1.8 million?
Yeah, it's correct. So the way that we do business is when we find a deal that works for the operator and the investor, we put it up on the platform. That is then fractionally funded by the investors. So you're right. They're coming in at, let's call it $8,000 to $50,000.
Gotcha.
As a base level. And at this point, we have never put something on the platform that didn't fund in full. So
I'm going to cut you off because that makes me nervous as an operator. That I usually have to deal with one landlord, Dave, that owns the land, and now I might have 30 landlords.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Or how's that work when it's funded in such small amounts?
Yeah, so you're completely shielded from the investor. It turns out that one landlord usually has a whole lot to say about how you do your business. 100 landlords that don't have access to you tend to be a little bit easier to deal with, right? So functionally, the operator comes to me, they never speak to the investor, and the investor has no voting rights, they have no control over that asset, they don't choose when it sells, they don't negotiate the lease. You deal exclusively with AcreTrader management, we deal with the investors.
So now I have way more questions. So as an investor, if I have no control, why would I invest? And here's why. So Tanner, let me just talk through a couple of different ways to take title of a farm. Most of us take it as joint tenants, married, husband and wife. We're joined at the hip, joint tenants, okay? Another way, let's pretend Rob and I want to buy a farm together. We'll buy it as tenants in common, okay? So we have a common interest, but it's an undivided interest. What acres do you own? What acres do I own? We're just 50-50. We're 50-50 interest, so an undivided interest as tenants in common. Then we can go to limited partnership, an actual partnership, LLC. We can start a corporation. I'm assuming that all of these, you're starting a corporation, LLC, and then we're all members of the LLC. Is that correct?
That's correct. So you're buying a share ownership of the LLC, not direct title of the land. The LLC holds direct title to the land.
So I got 5 questions here probably. What happens when I want to sell it? Do I have any decision-making ability? Do I get paid the same as everybody? We're going to go to all of these.
Just do one at a time.
One at a time. So let's start with the first one. So we all buy in. And there's, say, 10 of us, Tanner, and there's 10 of us here, and we all give, whatever, $10,000, and we buy this nice farm. Talk me through the process. What's it look like?
Yeah.
Is it a bid? Is it the first 10 guys that give money?
That's correct, yeah. So all of our farms launch on the platform at 1 p.m. on a weekday.
Okay.
They fund as quickly as possible. So in general, let's call that a day to a week. Our record so far is about $11 million in an hour and a half.
What? $11 million in an hour and a half?
Yes, sir. Our last row crop offering we did, that was the Willamette Valley Farm. That was about $6.7 million. That one took a couple of days, but the first $5 million came in the first 24 hours.
So our listeners could have access to a farm-funded source that they don't have to wait months for a result.
We routinely put together purchase agreements in a couple of days. We close in 30 to 45.
Dave, that's quick.
Mm-hmm. Very quick.
You had another question. Or did you get all of them answered?
Nope, that was the first one. So what if I want to sell it? What if I need to sell my interest out? My kid's going to go to college. I just lost my job, and now I need to sell my asset.
Sure. So you can sell your share in that LLC, and
Okay.
we have a system. You can reach out to us and say, hey, I need to liquidate this. That said, we don't encourage it. I mean, we are working on standing up a pure secondary market, but ultimately, I want investors to stick around. I want you to invest for 5 to 10 years, and the reason there's a range, so investors are giving us money and saying, I'm going to get this return back. I mean, you're getting a K1 and then your split of rent every year. So you have some cash coming in annually. But about 80% of your expected return on a row crop deal is from land appreciation. That's why we have a range of sale periods. So sometime between years 5 and 10, that asset will be sold. In my mind, I want investors to be educating themselves on the reality of agriculture rather than expecting the liquidity they see in other industries. So if in year 5 the market is down, you don't want to sell that asset at that point.
So when you guys go in and put this opportunity, is what I'll call it, opportunity up on your platform, what I'm assuming is that you've already talked with Tanner, and Tanner decided he's going to, we have a good operator, his name's Tanner, he's going to farm this farm, he's willing to give $350 cash rent, that makes a 3.2% cap rate net return after taxes or something of that nature, and then you post that out there with the return. So as an investor, I know what the return on investment is just right away as the cap rate.
Right, the initial return.
That's correct.
Gotcha. What is the average initial return?
Yeah, so it's going to vary pretty drastically depend on deal structure as well as region. So, what we focus on, at least on the row crop side of the business, which is mine, though we do permanent crops and timber as well. When we think about a row crop operator, I'm not interested in being a rent pinch. Right? If the majority of the expected return is from appreciation, I don't want, the farmer to be stretching themselves on $7 corn to get a rent out there in a 1-year contract. The majority of our contracts are 3 to 5 year leases. It is extremely rare for us to change an operator during the life of an investment opportunity. I want operators to come to me because they have access to acreage and they're looking for equity to expand their business. So an operator says, and as you have talked about previously on this show, there's a lot of places an operator can go for capital. Right? You can go to your bank, there's a private investor that you have locally, there's a REIT or a fund. We're just another one of those options. I think the difference is we're democratic. So I get operators calling me all day, every day saying, I'm at a disadvantage because my neighbor has 4 people in their back pocket and I don't. I'm a democratic option that in a certain way, I'm a glorified math problem. Right, you come to me and you say, hey, I have an opportunity on this 260. I really want to be on this ground. I'm not in a position to buy it. How do we set up a deal that works for both of us? Ultimately, I want to find the deals that are a win for the investor and a win for the operator. And that's the only type of investment I'll put on the platform. I say no more than I say yes. So the only downside to my platform is it's got to be a win for both sides. If an operator comes in and I run the numbers and say, yeah, you're offering me a 4 cap, but you're telling me you're paying 500 acre rent on 180 bushel, that's not sustainable. And I need sustainable investments that both defend the asset and allow you to grow your business on our platform.
Dave, if I had $1 for every time I've heard a listener or a customer say just what he did about, well, my neighbor's got 4 investors, or an uncle that's a doctor, or I just can't compete, I think I would have enough money to buy a farm. And now we might have just found the listeners a solution to that same, I'm going to call it just providing a competitive edge.
So that might work if the landowner offers it to them. So let's say that they're farming it. And then they got, the landowner said, hey, you've been a good tenant. I'd like you to operate it. But they don't have the funds, but they know the 4 neighbors do. Does this work with auctions? And the reason I say that is, okay, yeah, Tanner, like you're talking, is you're out there and you don't have the money. Doggone it, those 4 neighbors are going to outbid me. Can we get all of this done and find investors and an operation before we go to an auction to say, hey, I got the bidding power up to $16,000 an acre?
So yes, though in general, I'm not at top of market. So, we compete at auction, right? I can put down the earnest money, we can float that, and then we can raise it before close. We have purchased several farms at auction. Realistically, our success percentage at auction today, certainly given the run-up in the last 18 months, is about 1%. So I go to 100 auctions, we win 1 of those. So generally, when I'm talking to operators, yeah, you can tell me about the auction. We're also tracking all of those and going to those and have a network of farmers we reach out to if we win one. But realistically, most of our work is going to be off-market.
It's the private side of the deal.
Right.
correct.
It's the get to the win. I got to talk to a group of lieutenant governors, and one of them stated that her dad had always said you got to get to the win. And I think that's what you're saying is you can't spend $16,000 on an acre and only want to pay $220 an acre cash rent here in Iowa. You know, we had a conversation with a gentleman from Colorado that said land prices out there were $900 an acre, but they only get 40 bushel corn. So, yeah, I can see how this could be a tool in the right situation, but you're not going to be able to go and outbid at top dollar at a public auction.
Correct. So, Tanner, when I think of any, I'm going to call you an entrepreneurial startup, a new technology. That's what we're about here at Farm Progress Show is new technology, new progression. This is a progression in the farmland world that now it gives me the ability. Like I get buyers all the time. Dave, I got $100,000. I'd like to put in farmland. I got $250,000. It's like, hey, great. You still haven't met the barrier to entry yet. What Rob's got here actually puts us all together as a common unit so that we do have a bat to swing in $1 million game or a multi-million-dollar game, even if we're a $250,000 buyer.
Yeah, that's correct. And sort of back to Tanner's point on people coming and saying, you know, we need this access to investors. You know, y'all had somebody on a couple of weeks ago, Shay with Monier, and he was going through, you know, you have to figure out what your landlord's going to want. We sort of flipped that on its head, right? The operator that brings the deal to the platform, you get to dictate what that works. And I tell you whether or not, yes, we can get this funded or no, we can't. So you tell me what rent works for your business, what rent structure works for your business. And all I'm doing is saying, yes, A, I can verify that that is accurate and you're not stretching yourself too thin. And then B, yes, that has the investor demand on the other side of the table.
So when I think of where I was going with the previous thought, entrepreneurial startup, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do we have the investors or do we have the operators? Can you give me any kind of indication of if I'm an operator, I'm a young guy, and I'm like, man, I want to compete against the neighbors. Is there 1,000 people on your platform? Is there 10,000? Is there?
We have a little over 80,000 registered investors on our site, about 100,000 if you include contacts.
So when you talk supply and demand, you right now do not have a shortage of money supply, and the demand is high on sourcing land.
That is correct. So we right now are supply pinched rather than demand pinched, though it tends to ebb and flow, right? I mean, as a business that is growing, you're watching those two things track together and trying to make sure that you're meeting both sides.
So Tanner, I heard about these guys down at the National Land Conference, Realtor Land Institute. They were a vendor there as well as at the Farm Progress Show. So that's a group of all land professionals that get together every year. And we met down there. I know you're in other places other than Iowa. What's the reach? Where do we have investor base, or where does everybody want to buy farmland? I know everybody wants to buy Iowa, but
it's true. So, I mean, we're in 17 U.S. states. We've run 2 deals in Australia as well. We are only open to United States investors. So all of our investors are United States citizens. And we cover everything from, I mean, that Willamette Valley deal we did a couple of weeks ago was, you know, we're talking grass seed, broccoli, cauliflower, obviously ton of corn and beans throughout Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois. We do quite a bit of business in Georgia. There's cotton, peanuts down there, as well as corn and beans. And then we're from Arkansas. So the Delta was sort of where we developed this model. And obviously there you're going to get your rice, your cotton, your corn, your beans as well.
Tanner, as a banker, I'm trying to think, okay, I'm an investor. Right now, the first part of this year, stock market's been kind of crappy, I'm going to say. And I've seen guys moving their money to farmland if they can, or commercial investments, whatnot. How does this compare to stocks and bonds?
You asking me?
Yeah, you're the banker.
Well, I don't necessarily know the returns that he's able to get for his investors, but to me, I'm looking. The word I wrote down was diversified, and I'm looking at this as a potential investment opportunity for our listeners as well. Because if I am standing there as a banker looking at your whole return on assets, it's not going to just be from the crop acres that you farm. It's one of those to where, okay, you might not be able to participate in that land auction, but you have $100,000 of capital to deploy.
Yep.
Maybe you become an investor on the platform and you get a return from somebody else's cash rent that continues to help you generate wealth rather than have your $100,000 of cash or capital not invested in something that's generating a return for you. Because just like you said, you look at stocks and bonds right now, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but your portfolio would be outperforming that.
Yeah, so I mean, when you think about how farmers also work as investors on our platform, right? That's twofold. The first is diversification. So we have plenty of farmers and some farmers that farm for us that are investing in other regions. Yeah, I'd love to put $100,000 into broccoli in the Willamette Valley, or onions in Washington, or whatever, peanuts in Georgia, because that is a little bit of an offset. I'm not all tied up in land in Winnebago County. The other side of that is we have lots of farmers that invest alongside the investor on the platform. So, hey, I want to come in with 20% of this and then raise the additional 80% on the platform. That allows you, A, to pay yourself rent, and B, when that asset then gets sold, because there is a horizon, right? The investor, well, we have educated the investor, and the investor has told us they're willing to lock up their money for 5 to 10 years without a ton of control over it. There is an exit. You as the farmer might say, well, man, I want to own this ground someday. Well, if you're investing in that, your money is appreciating and you have a 20% discount at purchase.
So now I got a question. You said, let's pretend that I want to farm this farm. I have one right now that I'd like to farm. And I just don't know if I have enough money to make it happen, okay? And it's a private deal. And I'm going to have to go to the bank and borrow a little bit. So now I'm curious, how well do we work with banks? If I get the 80%, but my 80% might be, this might be a convoluted scenario, but let's say Tanner's my banker, and I have a good 40% down of what the total farm is, but I'd like to borrow a little more, and he'll loan me some, but he's only going to loan me 40%. So now I'm at 80%. I got 40 down, I got 40 from the bank, but man, they still really want a high price, but I'd really like to operate this. Can the banker work with you and another investor?
Right. Just for the listeners to clarify that question, I think he's asking Rob, will the investors in the group allow a mortgage on the property, or are these mortgage-free acquisitions?
So to date, the majority of our row crop offerings have not included any leverage.
Gotcha.
On the permanent crop side, we have included leverage, and we're working right now to find ways to do that on the row crop side as well. Obviously, there's questions of clean title, there's questions of where the lien is and how you spread those costs.
Who's first position? Yeah, exactly.
But what I will say to that is, A, we have successfully done that with, I guess through the platform, we're a little over 250 million raised. And let's say, I don't know, 50 to 100 million of that has been included in a leveraged deal. We have not done that so much on the row crop side, but there are models available to do that.
Perfect.
That's not the answer I expected. I expected it to be disencouraged because of that leverage position, because of first lien, first right.
Sure, but I mean, ultimately the bank is going to have first right? So the investor, a farmer's looking to spread their risk, right? Ultimately that's what a farmer needs to do. They need to stretch their capital further, they need to spread their risk. The investor is coming on and saying, I want to put my money into ag, but I don't have the expertise to do that. I don't understand how to access this asset class. So yes, you're last in the capital stack as the investor, but you also have the upside of that long-term appreciation. You're getting cash rent from a return, and flex deals as well. We can get pretty complex with our deal structures. Ultimately, it is what works for both sides. So if the investor's excited about it, the farmer's excited about it, we can generally get it done.
So one real quick question. How long has AcreTrader been around?
So coming up on 4 years.
Okay, so now I have a question. When we talk about second position, third position, et cetera, when we talk investing as venture capital money, or we talk investing as small-time investors, sometimes there's a thing called angel investors. I invested in what I call a farm startup and lost it all. And I lost it all because I thought they had a really good program. What do you say at your booth today when somebody says, man, I just don't know. You've been around a short amount of time. I want to see more relevance. I fought this in my business. Any business, it takes a while to get your feet on the ground. What's the pitch there?
Sure. So it's two-sided. On the AcreTrader, so if you're talking about AcreTrader as a company, we went through a Series B, I guess the beginning of this calendar year. The vast majority of that money that we raised is still in the coffers. So we are a well-capitalized business. We run extremely conservative on our side. However, the farmer's completely immune to that. I could go out of business tomorrow. Every single LLC that owns those farms still exists, and in the contract for the setup of that LLC, there's a clear plan for then how the investor exits that at the end without our involvement.
And the lease is still in place. You're still subject to local and state lease laws as the farmer, operator, tenant. Yeah, all of that's contractually put in place. It's not reliant upon the existence of AcreTrader.
That's correct. And I tell people all the time, a lot of times the deals that we work on are personal, right? It is you and your neighbor, or your neighbor passes away and their kids inherit it and maybe they don't live there. I'm more than happy to hand the operator themselves the purchase agreement and the lease agreement in tandem to deliver themselves. There is no option for me to cut you out.
And that's where I was going to go with it. So, like when I look at your title, investment manager, are you managing the portfolio and the transaction, or are you managing the farm? Are you guys a farm management company as well?
We are not.
Okay,
So
just to make that clear to everybody.
That's correct. Yeah, so I'm not interested in telling farmers how to farm. Like I want to make that abundantly clear, right? I live in Arkansas, and in my portion of Arkansas, northwest Arkansas, we farm rocks and chickens. And so I'm not going to come out and tell a farmer, hey, you have to be doing X, Y, and Z. Our lease agreement is pretty simple. And the point of that is I'm looking for the opportunity that the farmer wants to drive. I want the farmer to be the center of that deal. I want them to set the terms, and then I'm simply sort of the gatekeeper that says, yes, this is fundable by the investor. This is exciting to the investor. It's exciting to you. Let's see if we can put this together.
Okay, so how does AcreTrader get paid in these transactions? If you're not a farm manager, managing the funds, building the relationships, where does AcreTrader get their cut?
That's correct. So the investor is paying us for access to the asset class. We are not taking
it's
a
on
cut
the
from the
investor
farmer.
side.
That's correct. The farmer's not paying for access to the platform.
Dave, this is almost sounding better and better as an option. Obviously, we know we can't top markets with it, or if we do top markets, we have to come up with a great sustainable plan to make sure that this works. But we're not only providing access to capital for our listeners, we're potentially providing them with an avenue of investment and a way to manage the longevity and future of their farm.
I think the only thing I would tack on top of that is when I look at my math problem, CapEx is the easiest thing for me to play with, right? So while I might not be the top of the market, right? I might not be the guy out there paying 16 grand an acre for ground. If I can find good quality ground that needs a problem solved, it's a hell of a lot easier for us to bring in additional CapEx to tile out that ground, to remove some trees, to level up an old torn down house to get you a couple extra acres. And again, the investor is largely focused on the asset appreciation side. So it's not like, oh, then we're going to jack your rent way up. It is, no, we're increasing the value of the asset, and that's what we're in bed with.
I had a quick question to kind of bounce back a little bit. Sorry, listeners, for jumping around like squirrels, like we looked at. Back to the age of AcreTrader, 4 years into business. Have you had any of these contracts go through successful exits yet?
4. Look, I won't lie to you and tell you this is all skill. Part of this is when we started our business and when the land market moved. But of those 4, the investors generally looking up front for somewhere between an 8 and 9% IRR. Of those 4, the IRR is between 15 and 32%.
Oh, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad. And to be clear, I'm always open to offering a right of first offer directly to the operator. And the first or second farm we sold was directly to the operator. The operator came to us and said, hey, I really like this piece. I'm doing extremely well on it. I got some capital together. I'd like to buy it. We found a number that worked for both sides and got it done that way.
One quick follow-up, and I know where you're going. Do you ever replace investor groups with investor groups?
We to date have not done that. And part of that is because the investor's focused on the exit and we want to find the opportunity to improve that value. So if we're saying we've tiled this out, this is a great piece of property, we're selling it at market value on that today, to roll that into the next opportunity, generally you'd want to roll low.
Not top of market,
Exactly.
Yep.
So what if I have 3 friends and we all want to buy farmland, but we really don't want anybody else in the hen house? So us 3, Rob, Tanner, Dave, we want to invest. Can we bring our and say, hey, we don't want anybody else in the pie. We want our own private investment club, but structure it through AcreTrader?
No, not today. So our investment relations team is working on how you structure different things. Say it's going through RIAs or whatever the case may be. But realistically, we're pretty focused on being a democratic platform on both sides. So I don't want to tell you have to be this type of farmer or you have to be this type of investor. I want to be able to say, hey, same way, right? You have lots of investors that say, hey, I would love to invest in farmland, right? But my options are REITs, which are tied to the market. And if you're looking for an asset that doesn't correlate, you maybe don't want to tie to the market. Or large funds, in which case you need to deploy millions of dollars. Well, you can come in with $50,000, and if you're the first person there at 1 p.m., and we have tons of investors that are logged in on our website, they watch the webinars, they watch all the PR that we do about an opportunity coming up, and they are literally sitting waiting to click the button as soon as it launches, so then they can get in. That's democratic. It doesn't matter how much you're putting in above the minimum to get that.
So
it's not like being the 7th caller on a radio station.
Let's. I got a different question. Since I'm an auction company, I'm going to take it that direction. Let's pretend that us 3 bought in. We're the investors, and we each put $500,000 into a $1.5 million farm. Okay, we saw the market went up. Hey, we did a great job. We bought it at $8,000 an acre. It's at looking like 15. We decide we're going to capitalize on this, and we're going to sell out. If we decide that we want to sell out, not the operator, so the investors decide on their side, well, they want top dollar. They offer it to the operator. Operator says, I can't afford that. I'm not going to do it. What's the means to an end? Do you hire Dave Whitaker Auction Company to then sell this farm for the highest and best?
Yeah, it's a good question. So first of all, the investor does not have voting power to choose when that exit happens. So you can't call me and say, I think you should sell this farm. You can, but you don't have any control over that. Our answer is probably going to be no. Right? We're going to wait for the window. A, we want to make sure we're meeting expectations. But B, we also want to honor the papered lease. I'm interested in longer term leases to that operator. That said, when we exit, I guess so far of our 4, maybe one of them, maybe 2 of them are publicly listed, but I believe only one of them was publicly listed.
Gotcha.
That's a good question, Dave. I like that because it gives the listener that could be a tenant operator the more stability in this opportunity.
That's correct. I want everything to be focused long term, right? I mean, $7 corn was really great. $1,200 anhydrous was not, right? I generally don't think in short term trends. I think about what makes sense. If I lay this out for a decade, what makes sense for the operator and the investor, and how do we find that marriage?
So do you guys at AcreTrader, you said you take a commission from the investor. Do you take that just on the initial sale, or do you take that on the appreciation they made over the years but until you exit that property?
Sure. Yeah, so AcreTrader is making money in a couple of different ways. First of all, I have a sister brokerage. So if we're brokering a deal, then there's a brokerage commission that goes to my sister brokerage. So that's one pinch. The second one is the investor is paying a management fee because, again, we're doing everything. We're setting up the lease. We're sending them annual reports. We're going out and making sure everything's going well. We're managing improvement projects. They're paying 75 bips on the dollar for that, so 0.75%. So less than a penny on the dollar. They are paying to us on an annual basis for the length of that hold. Then on the back end, obviously, we are then adjudicating that sale as well. So then there's a clip on the back end as well for us.
So it's a good business model to give listeners, farmers, access to capital. It's a good business model to gain access to land and assets with returns as far as an investment purpose goes. I want to ask one more question here before we get into wrap-up mode about 1031 exchanges. So I'm going to look at 2-part question. Start with the first part. I am a farmer, just sold a piece of ground. I've got 1031 exchange money. Am I able to roll that into an investment?
No, sir.
Okay.
And that's because of the structure. You're buying a share of an LLC, not title to land.
Not title to land.
Normally, whatever you sell, you got to buy it in the same name as well.
So secondly, that gives me the answer, I think, for part 2 question. I'm an investor. We are rolling out of an investment. There's no 1031 exchangeable value because I sold a company. I didn't sell an asset.
That's correct. Now, where we do work in the 1031 space, and this is actually fairly common for us, is I get a call from somebody and they say, hey, I need to sell this ground to be able to buy something else with 1031 money. So on the farmer side, it is usually, there's an auction coming up next door. I'm not going to watch either. I'm not going to watch that guy farm, or I really need to make more contiguous acres by my home site. So they say, look, I want to sell something that's my furthest out farm. I maybe don't want to drive there forever, but today I'm doing that. I don't want to lose that acreage, but I want to sell it in 1031 that money to home. Great, we'll do a sale leaseback, right? You set your terms, and then you are leasing that ground back, 1031ing that money. And because we're so fast and versatile, again, I'm not top buyer. So ultimately, I have to do everything else well. I have to be super malleable. We have to be incredibly transparent, and we have to be very fast. So you then take that money, 1031 it to this farm you want to buy. I'm more than happy to extend close dates and adjust our contract to make sure you can execute that.
So as an investor, when I'm looking at your platform and I see soil maps, I'm looking at it, there's got to be a performa on this and a prospectus that basically is an appraisal, is what I would think. Do you work with an appraisal company, or is someone giving an appraisal on the farmland to say it's worth X before you start?
It's a great question. So I think from our end, the short answer is no, we're not getting a third-party appraisal, but that's because we are a data company, right? I mean, ultimately what I'm doing is looking at hundreds and hundreds of opportunities and trying to find the right one. And then I have to explain that to an investor. I have to educate an investor. And it's not just like soil scores. We're doing 30-minute webinars. I don't want to say the only company. I post all of my financials. You can look at them. You can see every assumption that's made all the way down for what is this improvement budget and what's it going to? what's this cost of land? And then I have to stand up in front of a whole bunch of investors that are peppering me with questions. Why is this worth $8,531 per acre? And I have to justify that to them using data, right? I mean, that's what the investor wants to see. So we're not using a third-party appraisal up front. We do that on the back end. So every 2 to 3 years, we'll run an appraisal. But we're doing that on our end, A, with a desktop appraisal internally, and then B, we have a huge network of contacts, brokers, farm managers, agronomists, people that are working with us to help us understand local markets.
So Tanner, I guess I only have one more question, and I've only heard one thing so far. What doesn't work with AcreTrader? What's the negative?
Yeah, we can't top the market.
And we can't do a 1031 out of it.
That's correct, yeah. And I think outside of that, I mean, again, we have succeeded and grown the way that we have because we are malleable and because we're listening to the operator. So I want the operator to call me with the audacious idea. Like, I'm genuinely interested. And to be clear, you know, I don't know, as a company across all 3 business units, so AcreTrader is the investment platform, Pro is a brokerage, and then Acres is our mapping software, which we haven't really talked about and can if y'all want to. But functionally across those, there's, let's call it 150 employees at the company. There are 10 of us that do all of the land diligence and acquisitions for permanent crops, row crops, and timber. So there's just 4 of us. You can call us and we'll pick up the phone if you're a row crop operator. I'm interested in what your idea is. I'm interested in how you want to grow your business on our platform.
Dave, this is fascinating, and I think this is going to provide some value to our listeners to at least get them curious. So, Rob, I know that you're going to get questions that are going to be very specific to operations, and that's probably the only way to get those questions answered is to come and ask you. So, before we wrap up, what else do you want to share about AcreTrader before I summarize our conversation for today?
Sure. So, I mean, I think ultimately I want to drive home that I'm not focused on competing to own the most assets. I am focused on being the platform that other people grow their businesses. I want to have brokers to be able to grow their businesses. I want farmers to be able to grow their businesses. I want investors to be able to grow their portfolios. I want to be the platform that other people are meeting each other and doing business together, rather than the person stepping in and trying to compete in a relatively crowded marketplace for ground.
Yeah, I like the way that you put that. So, Dave, you get to challenge everybody today. Rob, we ask every one of our guests what the best advice you've ever been given is. So I'll give you some time to think about that. It doesn't have to apply to AcreTrader. This is just a fun piece we like to ask all of our guests. So what is the best advice you've ever been given? We're here talking with Rob Moore, investment manager on the row crops division for AcreTrader. He's from Arkansas.
I'm from Florida originally. I've been in Arkansas about 12 years.
There you go. He is providing a potential solution with gaining access to capital to allow you either as an investor to own land or you to maintain a land base as a tenant using their platform. A lot of the agreements that they put together are 3 to 5 years, sometimes 10. They look at longevity on the relationship. They want to see a sustainable operation. They want to see a sustainable return on investment. They are working with, right now, a larger supply of investors than they actually have supply of land available. So their supply-demand balance right there is looking for more land and deals to invest in. Could be an opportunity for you as the listener to diversify your operation, whether that is through liquidating, putting more working capital back into your farm by selling a farm and leasing it back, or by taking your excess capital and putting that into the market. So that way you could maybe invest in a broccoli farm and you're a row crop farmer in Iowa, giving yourself maybe diversified income sources. One thing that I didn't get to ask, and I will after I wrap this up, is their goal is to get to a win. It's got to be a win-win for both sides because that's how these long-term leases work. Shared ownership is an option. It is not something we can 1031 exchange into or out of because you're buying ownership in an LLC. They have had successful exits even though their company is quite young. But the goal is to make sure that those are communicated very clearly. The investors themselves don't have a vote. They are buying into an investment package that has set time horizons, which creates stability for the tenants themselves. It is a very democratic model. They themselves take a cut from the investor side. They get paid. That was explained very clearly. If you missed it, go back and listen to it. And it is used to help grow farm businesses. But before you answer the question, I got one following one. How is your recruitment team recruiting investors?
Sure. So, I mean, part of that is just media, right? I mean, we're out there screaming from the rooftops, you really should have part of your portfolio in agriculture. And there's lots of different ways to do that. We are one of them. Right? It shouldn't be your whole portfolio, but I think every investor should have a portion of their portfolio in agricultural land. So part of that is media. I think the other side is, look, we pick up the phone. We're a relatively small team. There are, I guess, 5 or 6 people on the IR team. Again, 4 of us on the row crop acquisition side, 3 on permanent crops, 2 on timber. So it's by answering people's questions. It's by being grilled over and over and over again and being just sort of insanely transparent. Right? I mean, I will show you my model. I will tell you every single response I'm going to get, and if it's a win for both of us, it works.
That's great. Okay, and now, what is the best advice you've ever been given?
The best advice I have ever been given is that hard work almost always beats smarts, and if it doesn't beat it, it will outlast it.
Ooh, I like the second part of that. Will outlast it. Mm-hmm. So, Dave, what's your challenge for our listeners today?
Being progressive in farming, Tanner, as we've talked with people for 3 years now, is finding a new way to pivot, adapt, overcome, etc., to make your operation work. I'm going to challenge everybody to find a way to make that work. If it is this program, AcreTrader, that might be making a way to finding a solution to an end game. As we said, this isn't a short term; it's long term. So if you were thinking like, nope, doggone it, I'm never getting investment money. I'm not going to do that. I'm hard. I'm not going to do that. Find a solution to the problem. That's my challenge. Whatever it is, it might be what we're talking about today, but it might be, hey, I need a new grain bin. What's the solution to find the money?
Absolutely. So, Rob, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to find you and ask those questions, what's the best way for them to learn about you and AcreTrader?
Sure. So AcreTrader.com is going to have all the information about our organization, all our contact information. And again, I almost always tell people, like, sure, read everything that we have on our website, but pick up the phone and call me. Pick up the phone and call me. Let's talk about it. So then you get the direct answer that you need.
I love it. Thank you so much. This has been a very valuable episode. Listeners, thanks for listening. And until next time, have a good one.
Remember, if you aren't farming for profit, you won't be farming for long.